everyone, my name is Alexandra and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most important systems in biology, the circulatory system and gas exchange. Have you ever wondered how oxygen gets from your lungs all the way down to your toes, or how your body gets rid of carbon dioxide? In this video, we'll explore how the heart, blood vessels, blood, and lungs work together to keep every cell in your body alive and functioning. By the end of this lesson, you'll understand how blood circulates through the body, how gases are exchanged in the lungs, and why these systems are essential for maintaining homeostasis. So let's get started and take a journey through the amazing transportation network in your body. So why do we need circulatory and gas exchange systems? The answer is that every cell in your body needs a constant supply of oxygen and nutrients in order to produce energy and stay alive. At the same time, cells are continuously producing carbon dioxide and other wastes that must be removed. For very small organisms such as single-celled organisms, this is a major problem. They can rely on diffusion, the passive movement of molecules from areas of high concentration to areas of low concentration to exchange materials directly with their environment. However, as organisms become larger and more complex, diffusion alone isn't sufficient anymore. The distance from the outside environment to many internal cells becomes way too great, and the diffusion is way too slow to meet the body's needs. So to solve this problem, animals evolved specialized circulatory and gas exchange systems. These systems can rapidly transport oxygen, nutrients, and other essential substances to cells while removing carbon dioxide and wastes, helping maintain a stable internal environment. In other words, without these systems, your cells would be waiting a very long time for their oxygen delivery, probably longer than you wait for your favorite online order to arrive. Before we dive into the details, let's look at the big picture. The circulatory and respiratory systems are two of the most important systems in the body. They work together constantly to keep us alive. The circulatory system acts like the body's transportation network. It moves oxygen, nutrients, hormones, and waste products to and from cells throughout the body. Every cell depends on the system to receive the supplies it needs and to get rid of wastes. The respiratory system has a different but equally important job. It exchanges gases between the body and the environment. So when we breathe in, we take in oxygen, and we breathe out, we remove carbon dioxide. These systems are very tightly connected. The respiratory system loads oxygen into the blood in the lungs, and then the circulatory system delivers that oxygen to cells all over the body. At the same time, the circulatory system carries carbon dioxide produced by cells back to the lungs where it can be exhaled. Together, these systems help maintain homeostasis, which means keeping the body's internal environment stable despite changes in the outside world. Now let's compare open and closed circulatory systems. In an open circulatory system, the circulating fluid called hemolymph doesn't always stay inside vessels. Instead, it leaves the vessels and directly bathes the organs and body spaces. Think of it kind of like pouring soup into a bowl and letting everything just soak in. Because of this, pressure is relatively low, so transport is slower and less controlled. But the trade-off is that it takes less energy to maintain, so it works well for animals like insects and most mollusks, basically organisms that aren't trying to run a marathon every day. This picture is an open circulatory system. As you see here, this grasshopper has an open circulatory system, and you can see that there's no closed blood vessels, and that the body fluid is just mixing with the hemolymph inside these orangey this orange part here, and then it's just going into the body. Let me turn off my laser. Okay, next, in a closed circulatory system, things are more organized. Blood stays inside a network of vessels, as we said, arteries, capillaries, and veins, and exchange happens through capillary walls. This creates a higher pressure which means faster and more efficient transport of oxygen and nutrients. It's like switching from a sponge soaking water to a high-speed delivery system. This system is found in vertebrates like humans and also like earthworms, who, to be fair, are very committed to efficiency despite having no limbs. In this picture, you see a closed circulatory system, and then this is a earthworm, and then you can see that it has blood vessels, and then unlike here, like the fluid or the blood isn't like mixing or like bathing over your organs, because imagine how weird that would be, like thinking of your stomach, like the outside of your stomach just being bathed in blood. Like, no thank you. Now let's break down the main components of the circulatory system. First is the heart. This is a muscular pump of the system. It generates the pressure needed to keep blood moving continuously, and basically it's the engine of the whole operation. Next are the blood vessels, which form an organized network of arteries, veins, and capillaries. Arteries carry blood away from the heart, veins bring it back, and capillaries are where the real exchange happens. Oxygen, nutrients, and wastes all get swapped here. Then we have blood, which is actually a connective tissue, not just a liquid. It transports oxygen, nutrients, hormones, and waste products through the body, kind of like a delivery service that never takes a day off. Finally, there are the two major pathways, the pulmonary and systemic circuits. The pulmonary circuit sends blood between the heart and lungs to pick up oxygen and release carbon dioxide. The systemic circuit delivers that oxygen-rich blood to the rest of the body. So overall, the circulatory system isn't just a pump and some tubes. It's a highly organized transport network keeping every cell supplied and functioning. Now let's look at the structure of the heart. The heart has 4 chambers. The top chambers are the right and left atria, and they receive the blood. The atria are right here. Wait, my laser is lagging so much. Here and here. Oh my gosh. Here and here. Yeah, and then the bottom chambers are the right and left ventricles, which are these two, and then they pump blood out of the heart. The right side of the heart receives deoxygenated blood from the body, and then it sends it to the lungs through the pulmonary circuit. This is where carbon dioxide is released and oxygen is picked up. The left side of the heart receives oxygen-rich blood from the lungs and pumps it out to the rest of the body. It does this through the systemic circuit. Since the body is so much larger than the lungs, the left ventricle has a thicker muscular wall to generate a higher pressure. So it's basically the heart's power pump. To keep everything flowing in the correct direction, the heart also has valves. These include the tricuspid, pulmonary, mitral, and aortic valves. Their job is simple, but it's very important. Their job is to prevent backflow. Think of them as one-way doors that make sure blood doesn't take a wrong turn or go backwards. Now let's walk through the full blood flow pathway through the heart. Blood that is low in oxygen returns from the body and enters the right atrium. From there, it moves into the right ventricle, which pumps it to the lungs through the pulmonary circuit. In the lungs, carbon dioxide is released and oxygen is picked up through gas exchange. Now the blood is oxygen-rich. This oxygenated blood returns to the heart, entering the left atrium, then flows into the left ventricle. The left ventricle is the strongest chamber, so it generates enough pressure to send blood out to the entire body through the systemic circuit. Then the cycle repeats over and over again every minute of your life. And importantly, this flow is one way only, maintained by valves and pressure differences so blood doesn't backtrack like it forgot where it was going. Now let's talk about blood vessels, the transportation network of the circulatory system. First are the arteries, which carry blood away from the heart. Because the heart pumps with high force, arteries have thick, muscular, and elastic walls to handle the pressure. Most arteries carry oxygen-rich blood except for the pulmonary artery. Next are the veins, which carry blood back to the heart. Since pressure is lower here, veins have thinner walls, and they also contain valves to prevent blood from flowing backward, especially important when blood is moving against gravity in your legs. Finally, we have the capillaries, which are the smallest and most important for gas exchange. Their walls are only 1 cell thick, allowing oxygen, carbon dioxide, nutrients, and wastes to move between blood and tissues. So overall, arteries deliver, capillaries exchange, and veins return, like a complete looped delivery system that never stops working. Now let's break down what blood is actually made of. First, the largest component is plasma, which is a liquid portion of blood. It's not just water, it's a transport medium carrying nutrients, hormones, proteins, and waste products throughout the body. Next are red blood cells, also called erythrocytes. Their main job is to carry oxygen using a protein called hemoglobin. You can think of them as a delivery trucks for oxygen, constantly moving between the lungs and body tissues. Then we have white blood cells, or leukocytes. These are part of the immune system and act as the body's defense team, identifying and fighting pathogens like bacteria and viruses. Finally, there's platelets, which are not full cells but cell fragments. Their job is clotting. When you get a cut, they help form a plug and start the healing process so you don't lose too much blood. So even though blood looks so simple, like when you look at it, it's just a red liquid. It's actually a highly specialized mixture where each component has a very specific role in transport, defense, and repair. Now let's look at the cardiac cycle, which is basically the heartbeat in action. The cycle has two main phases, systole and diastole. During systole, the heart muscle contracts and pushes blood out, either to the lungs or to the rest of the body, depending on the chamber. During diastole, the heart relaxes and fills back up with blood, getting ready for the next pump. But this isn't random. The heartbeat is controlled by a built-in electrical system. It starts in the SA node, which is often called the heart's pacemaker. It sends out an electrical signal that tells the heart when to beat. That signal spreads throughout the atria, then to the ventricles, making sure the chambers contract in the right order, instead of all at once, which would be pretty chaotic, like trying to squeeze toothpaste from both ends of the tube at the same time. We can measure this electrical activity using an ECG or electrocardiogram. It records the timing and strength of these signals and helps us understand how well the heart is functioning. So overall, the cardiac cycle is a carefully timed sequence of electrical signals and muscle contractions that keeps blood moving efficiently every second of your life. Now let's talk about blood pressure, which is basically the force blood exerts on the walls of blood vessels as it moves through the body. Blood pressure is recorded as two numbers, systolic over diastolic. A common example is 120 over 80 millimeters of mercury. The systolic pressure is a higher number, and it measures the force when the ventricles contract and push blood out of the heart. This is a peak pressure phase of the cardiac cycle. The diastolic pressure is a lower number, and it represents the pressure when the heart is relaxing and filling with blood between beats. If blood pressure stays too high over time, it's called hypertension. This puts extra stress on blood vessels and the heart, kind of like keeping a garden hose under too much pressure for too long. It can eventually cause damage. Now let's move into the basics of gas exchange. Gas exchange is a process where oxygen moves into the body and carbon dioxide moves out. This happens by diffusion, meaning molecules move from areas of high concentration to low concentration. No energy required. Oxygen diffuses from the air into the blood because there's more oxygen in the lungs than in the blood. At the same time, carbon dioxide diffuses out of the blood into the lungs to be exhaled. This exchange happens across respiratory surfaces, which are very thin and moist structures. In humans, these are the alveoli in the lungs, which provide a large surface area for efficient diffusion. The efficiency of gas exchange depends on a few key factors. Large surface area, very thin barriers, and good ventilation to keep fresh air moving in and out. So in simple terms, gas exchange is all about fast, passive swapping of gases to keep your cells supplied with oxygen and remove waste carbon dioxide. Now let's follow the path air takes through the human respiratory system. Air first enters through the nose, where it is filtered, warmed, and humidified. This helps protect the lungs from dust and pathogens. It then passes through the pharynx and the larynx, which guide air towards the lower respiratory tract and also play a role in sound production. Next is the trachea or windpipe, which is reinforced with cartilage rings. These rings keep it open so it doesn't collapse when you breathe. The trachea splits into two bronchi, one for each lung, which further branch into smaller bronchioles, which spread air through the lung tissue. Finally, air reaches the alveoli, tiny air sacs surrounded by capillaries. This is where gas exchange happens. Oxygen enters the blood, carbon dioxide leaves it. So overall, the respiratory system is basically a highly branched delivery network designed to bring air efficiently to millions of tiny exchange sites deep in the lungs. Now let's focus on the alveoli, which are the real functional units of gas exchange in the lungs. Each lung contains millions of alveoli, creating an enormous total surface area. In fact, if you spread them out, the surface area is roughly comparable to a tennis court. That's how much space your body dedicates just to gas exchange. The walls of alveoli are extremely thin and they're only 1 cell thick. This allows oxygen and carbon dioxide to diffuse really quickly across them. There's no long distance to travel, so it makes the process really efficient. So each alveolus is also surrounded by a dense network of capillaries. This close contact between air and blood is what allows oxygen to move into the bloodstream and carbon dioxide to move out. Finally, alveoli are kept moist, which is important because gases need to dissolve before they can diffuse across membranes. So overall, alveoli are like tiny, high-efficiency exchange stations, small individually, but incredibly powerful when you have millions working together at once. Now let's look at how oxygen actually moves through the blood. Most oxygen in the body is not just floating freely in plasma. Instead, it is carried by a protein called hemoglobin, which is found in red blood cells. Hemoglobin can bind oxygen in the lungs where oxygen levels are high and then release it in tissues where oxygen levels are lower. This makes oxygen transport much more efficient. Without hemoglobin, blood couldn't carry nearly enough oxygen to support active tissues like muscles or the brain. A small amount of oxygen is also dissolved directly in the plasma, but that's only a minor contribution. Now, carbon dioxide is handled a bit differently. Most of it is transported in the blood as bicarbonate ions, which is HCO3-. This happens through a chemical conversion in red blood cells that helps move CO2 efficiently back to the lungs. A smaller amount is either dissolved in plasma or bound to hemoglobin. So overall, blood doesn't just move gases. It chemically transforms and packages them in different forms to make them transport as efficient as possible. Now let's talk about ventilation, which is basically how air actually moves in and out of the lungs. It all starts with a diaphragm, a dome-shaped muscle under the lungs. During inhalation, the diaphragm contracts and flattens. This increases the volume of the chest cavity, which lowers the pressure inside the lungs compared to the outside air, so air rushes in. Then during exhalation, the diaphragm relaxes and moves back into its dome shape. This decreases the volume of the chest cavity, increases the pressure inside the lungs, and pushes air out. So breathing is really driven by pressure differences, not the lungs actively pulling air in like a vacuum. The rib muscles also help by expanding and contracting the chest cage to make these volume changes more effective. So as in simple terms, change volume leads change change volume, change pressure, and then move air. It's a very elegant system, and thankfully one you don't have to think about every time you breathe. Here are some review questions, and then feel free to pause the video and answer these questions, and I'll show the answers in a sec. Okay, I'm going to show the answers now. Okay, check your answers, and we're going to move on. And that brings us to the end of our lesson on the circulatory system and gas exchange. Today we explored how the heart, blood vessels, blood, lungs, and alveoli work together to deliver oxygen to cells and remove carbon dioxide from the body. The key takeaway is that the circulatory and respiratory systems function as an integrated team to maintain homeostasis and keep us alive. Your heart and lungs perform these tasks continuously every second of every day. Fortunately, they don't ask for weekends off. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!